Hi and welcome to another short video on X-Way Managed File Transfer. In this video I'm going to be walking through a basic file transfer use case where I'm going to pick up files from a FTP server and send them to a SFTP server. So let's take a look at the requirements. For this flow, first up I'm going to need a FTP server, some details for logging on, the address and the download location. I'm going to need the SFTP target where I'm going to send files to, so I'm going to need the address for that, some credentials and an upload location where I'm going to put the files. And how that translates to secure transport configuration is I'm going to need a secure transport user account, the two transfer sites for the FTP and SFTP locations. I'm going to need a basic application and a subscription. Alright, let's get into building it. Right, so first up I'm going to need a user account. So I'm going to navigate to my accounts tab, click new account, and I'm going to call this FTP to SFTP. Okay, so I don't need an email because I'm not going to do any notifications in this case. I'm going to choose a user ID and a GID of 6000 here. And that's probably all I need for my mandatory settings. You'll see a few of these things have been populated from the demo business unit. The only other thing I might consider is setting up a login. In this case, because it's going to be a server initiated download and push, I'm not expecting a user to ever log on to this account, so I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that to make this a purely server initiated account. I'm going to set this to public because I might use this in later use cases to accept files from other accounts where we go through some routing scenarios. But for now, I'm going to leave everything as I've set here. So now that I've created the user account, I'm going to need a couple of transfer sites, and these are configured under the user's transfer sites tab. So first up, I'm going to create my FTP site. And I'm going to give it a name, source, and I've also got a couple of aliases resolving source and target, so I'm going to use those for these transfer sites. The port in this case for FTP is going to be 21. Network zone I'm going to leave as none. If you have an edge server, you might choose internet if this site is accessible via the edge, so out of the internet, but in this case none because my secure transport is going to go directly. So the download folder, I've got a folder waiting called downloads, and I'm going to download every file from this directory. In this case I'm not uploading anywhere with the site, so I'm not going to use the upload folder, so I'll leave that as blank. I'm going to uncheck FTP because it's a plain text FTP session, and some credentials, so source and a password. Right, so that should be ready to go. To verify an FTP site, I can then go and click this list button here. This is going to go out and do a couple of things. It's going to connect, verify that I can connect to the site and authenticate, and then it's going to list the directory. So I'm pretty much good to go now. I can see a couple of files there waiting to download. So I'll hit close and I'll go ahead and save that. The next thing I'm going to need is my SFTP site for the target. So I'll click add new. I'm going to select SSH as the protocol in this case, and I'll give it some alias. In this case I'm going to say target. That also happens to be the address of the server. 8022 is the port that I need to hit for SFTP. Again, I'm going directly from the ST, so I don't need to worry about the network zone. And in this case, I'm going to be pushing to an inbound server, so I'll be uploading. I won't be downloading, and I'll have a directory called uploads. So I don't need a download folder or a download pattern for this particular site. And I need some credentials. Again, I've got a couple of ways to test now. Because it's an SSH site, I've got this test connection button, and this is going to go and verify a couple of things. Firstly, that I can connect to the server, and secondly, that I can authenticate. And there we've got a successful connection and a successful authentication. So that site again should be good to go. I'm going to go ahead and save it. Okay, so now that I have my two transfer sites and my user account configured, I'm going to need to create a subscription. So from the subscriptions tab here, I can select one of my pre-existing applications. In this case, it's going to be a basic app, which is going to allow me to do a download and a push without any transformation logic in between. So really easy, standard use case. You can think of the subscription folder as a working folder, so I'm going to name it as such. Working. I've got two parts of this basic application to configure. The top part here and the bottom part here. So this is where I'm going to pull the files from, and this is where I'm going to see them to. So in this case, I'll put a check in the download, and I'll select my source transfer site. In the target, I'll put send files directly to my target. Now that should be all I need. What I would typically do here for this reoccurring transfer job is I would go ahead and define a schedule. So every maybe 1 minute, or once a day, monthly, or if we've got any kind of edge cases where we need to do a schedule maybe between 3 and 4 p.m. every couple of minutes, we can define a cron tab. And there's a bunch of examples there for cron schedules if we need to. In this case, I'm going to leave the schedule blank. I'm just going to go ahead and hit the Retrieve Files Now button. What that should do is trigger the entire subscription to pull from my source site and send it to my target site. I'm going to save that so I don't lose my changes, and then go and verify that the files have been transferred as expected. And just a note before I go and verify the file transfer, you're going to want to save this subscription before you hit the Retrieve Files Now button. The reason for that is it needs to create the subscription folder, and it won't do that until you hit save. So save the subscription, exit, and you can come back in and hit Retrieve Files Now. So what that looks like when it's worked is if I go into my operations file tracking window here, I should see 4 transfer records. So firstly, I've downloaded file 1 and file 2 from my FTP site, and then that has triggered the outbound push to my SFTP destination. Now if you want to have a look at the transfer, more detail of the transfer record, you can click on any of the links here, and it's going to group the inbound and outbound file transfer together. So I can see my FTP transfer here, and all of my FTP commands here, and then I'll see the push out to my SFTP site with all of the SFTP commands here. If you again want further detail, you can drill down with these links here, which are going to link all the server log entries to the transfer record. So this is pretty verbose, probably only relevant if you're going to start troubleshooting and seeing what's going on. But I'm happy with that. That transfer has downloaded a couple of files and sent them to my destination as I expected. So I'm going to conclude the video there. As always, if you've got any questions, please reach out. Happy to help.